and this is my math individual project. So for this project, I will be talking about tessellations. And in this presentation, I will be introducing what tessellations are, where tessellations are found, and of course, the importance and beauty of tessellations. But of course, before I get into where we exactly see it, we have to first understand what a tessellation is. So, what exactly is a tessellation? Well, according to Knockan and Knockan, a tessellation is a type of tiling that has a repeating pattern of figures that cover a plane completely without any gaps or overlaps. Maybe if you look into your kitchen tiles, you don't actually see any gaps of like if you have square tiles, you won't see a circle tile right in the middle of nowhere, right? There's always a pattern, and of course, it's completely covered. So, tessellation is known as a type of tiling, as mentioned, and do take note that shapes in this tiling must fit perfectly together. Later on, I will be showing more examples of this. So tessellations can actually be distinguished into three categories. First is the regular tessellation, second is the semi-regular tessellation, and of course, the irregular tessellation. So first, what is a regular tessellation? So a regular tessellation is formed by one congruent regular polygon, such as an equilateral triangle, a square, and a regular hexagon. So aside from these three shapes or polygons, it will not be counted as a regular tessellation. So again, this only has to be one of the three shapes that we see. So we have some examples here. So this is what a regular tessellation may look like. You can see that despite the first two, the one on the left and the one in the middle, we see that they have two different colors or more than two different colors. We see that they still have the same shapes. Now, I'd like to point out on the rightmost picture is this is still a tessellation. So as you can see, there's 6 sides, which makes it a regular hexagon. It's just beautiful how this regular hexagon shape has a design, and this actually shows that tessellations are not merely simply shapes, but you can have art formed along with it. So now on to our next one. What is a semi-regular tessellation? So a semi-regular tessellation is a type of tessellation that is formed by 2 or more regular polygons. So basically, instead of having one triangle as a design, you have a triangle and a square, as seen in the example. So lastly, we have an irregular tessellation. So an irregular tessellation can be formed by almost any different shape. So remember that this is actually only counted as a tessellation if there is a repeating pattern, as well as the area is covered completely without any gaps or overlaps. As you can see in this example, you see that there's a square or a diamond rather, then there's an octagon alongside it. Okay, so here are some other examples of irregular tessellations. So as you can see in the left side, wherein there's different types of shapes combined together, you can see that this isn't exactly a usual shape that we'd see, such as a circle or square or rectangle. And you can see that this is still counted as a tessellation because of the figure that it has and its repeating pattern. And lastly, we could also see that you can play around the tessellations where you can create designs. Okay, so now that we've defined tessellations, where do we actually see this? So in order to understand the concept more, and of course the importance of tessellations, I will be showcasing some pictures wherein I have found different types of tessellations. I've handpicked some pictures from my trips wherein I didn't really notice the patterns or the tessellations around me until, well, later on. So where do we exactly see this? So this is quite fun since I use my pictures from Spain. As you can see, there are tessellations even in the carpet. In this photo right here, you can see that there's a repeating pattern of these squares. And here as well, you can see that there is a different there are shapes here involved, of course, in the middle, and tessellation. So there's a pattern, of course, and I saw it in another wall here. This is again in Spain, and we see that they just changed up the colors, and it's so fun to see how something quite simple actually makes a whole lot of difference to what we atmosphere of Spain looks like. So now that we move on to that, I wanted to point this out wherein I saw more tessellations in this, even in the ceiling. So I found this quite fascinating. So you see how it's quite embedded there, and you see how it just makes the ceiling look less boring. It makes it look interesting, and it makes you want to look up into it. And here on the side we have some intricate designs. And okay, you see, one of the things that I didn't notice here is this was quite hard to actually see as a tessellation, since there are so many designs and details that I barely even noticed the pattern. But then you can see here that at the end you see how there's quite an order and a repeating pattern. And okay, of course, this is to add, okay, this is not overlapping or anything. This is not a 2D look at, and just seeing how this has been done, it's so amazing, right? So now we have two more things that I've noticed. These are again ceilings, and what I loved about these ceilings, okay, so the first one, you can see how there's regular patterns here, and you see how they can actually use tessellations for a smoother finish. Okay, so as you can see here, if you look at this, there's such a big design in the middle of the tessellation. So this is actually where they installed the lights, which is actually quite fascinating if you think about it, because it makes the whole ceiling look smoother and more magical and enchanting to look at. Now over here, we also have another cool thing that I noticed was the tessellation here is actually two types of tessellation. There are two types of tessellation here, and the first one is in the outer area, as seen, and then there's one more in the middle area. And likewise, they also put a light in the middle, which actually shows how you can play around tessellations and how you can add tessellations and make it work for your atmosphere and the design that you want to take. So of course, this may all seem odd, like why am I showing pictures of my trip? Well, I just wanted to point out the beauty that tessellation has. So we often see tessellation in our lives every day, even in our floors. But oftentimes, do we actually see the beauty that tessellations hold? You see how even the smallest intricate patterns, even though they are just repeating, actually has so much more potential and beauty into it. We also see how tessellations are actually quite important, that how they're designed, there should not be any overlapping or even gaps between them, which shows cleanliness and order. So we see that even though these are all man-made, but we see how there's still beauty into it. Of course, we see how if, let's say, there are gaps in our tiles or whatever, it actually looks quite unpleasant, which is why we have tessellations to surround us, and we see that there is beauty in all of this. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot. Thank you and good day.